What's up and welcome back to the Chris Gates Fitness Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. And in today's episode of the podcast, we're going to dive into the topic of should you eat less on rest days while bulking? The point of this episode is to talk about, when you want to try and build muscle, how should you figure out how to structure your nutrition to move you in that direction as effectively as possible? And the reason people ask this question about should you eat less on rest days while you're bulking is because oftentimes people think about training days and non-training days. And when you're in the gym training, you're in the gym burning calories, breaking down muscle tissue. Your body needs to recover from that. And when you're not in the gym training, if you have a rest day, which you should have, which I recommend everybody has, probably 2 to 3 of them a week, when you're not in the gym training, that means you're not doing those things, right? You're not probably burning as many calories, potentially, I guess. You're not breaking down muscle tissue. Your body doesn't have maybe as high of recovery demands, or does it? Okay, so we're going to talk about how you should structure your diet to maximize your bulk. And I think the way to maximize a bulk, a muscle gaining phase, is to maximize the amount of muscle that you're gaining while at the same time minimizing the amount of body fat that you're gaining. Because most people, I would assume the vast majority of people who go into a bulk, who want to build muscle, you probably can resonate with what I'm about to say. You want to minimize the excess body fat that you put on. Now, when you get into a bulk, you have to understand that you're going to be in a calorie surplus, which means you're going to take on some body fat. It's just part of the process. If you're bulking effectively, you're going to put on some body fat. And that can easily come back off with a well-structured cutting phase, which, that we're not going to go down that road. But in terms of program design and how to structure this type of stuff, it is often good to have longer bulking phases that maybe get broken up from time to time with mini cuts, or a longer dedicated fat loss phase, throughout the year at some point. So you're going to put on body fat, but it would be great to minimize the amount of body fat that you put on while maximizing the amount of muscle that you put on. So that's at the core of this episode. And I'm going to run a clip from a previous Q&A that I've done on the podcast to really break down a lot of need-to-know information to help you understand what the best way is to manage your nutrition, manage your diet when you want to bulk, when you want to build muscle. So we're going to talk about, calories burned, which is always a big topic. So how many calories are you actually burning when you go into the gym? And how does that evolve over time as you continue to train consistently? And then I'll really break down more or less 2 approaches that apply to everybody for the most part. There's a simple approach, which applies to the vast majority of people. And then there's maybe a more advanced approach that applies to folks who have been at this stuff for a while, who've been training consistently for, 3 to 5 years, or maybe even more, really consistently hard training with a good program and doing most of the right things most of the time. So I'm going to break down all of that. And I think at the end of this episode, you're going to have a really good idea of, okay, when you want to bulk, when you want to put on muscle mass, how should your diet follow along? Should you have high days and low days? Should you eat the same thing every single day? How should it all balance out based on when you're training and when you're not training? So I hope you find this episode helpful. Again, this is another one of my kind of greatest hits episodes, because I do understand that if you're subscribed to the podcast, if you listen regularly, there still may be episodes that you miss, or you may not listen to a full episode every single time. So some of these clips that I think are super helpful, I like to run periodically in shorter podcast episodes. And like I said, I hope you find it helpful. I really think you will. If you want to learn more about this topic, there will be a link in the show notes to an article on this exact same topic. So if this is helpful to you, make sure that you go down to the show notes. You can click over to my website and learn more about it. But with that said, let's not delay any longer. Let's talk about, should you eat less on rest days when bulking? is, should you eat more calories on the days you work out and less calories on the days you don't? So super logical reasoning there, right? If you're going to be working out some days of the week and other days you're not, let's say, in a 7-day week, you are going to work out 4 times. On those 4 days, should you eat more calories because theoretically you're burning more calories in the gym? And then on the days that you're not working out, should you not do that? Should you eat less? It's a really good question. And the answer, as so many things in fitness ends up being, is it kind of depends. I guess first and foremost, it probably depends on your goal. And then secondarily, it probably depends on your experience level. So, if your goal is to lose weight, or if your goal is to build muscle, I typically lean towards just eating the same amount of calories every day, because for most people, that tends to be the easiest to manage, the most straightforward, and takes a lot of guesswork out of each and every day. It makes it less complicated for you to know what you're supposed to eat and when and how to manage things. So I'm a big fan of not doing that, having high days and low days, just for the sake of simplicity. And that would apply to most beginners too, right? Regardless of your goal. If you're new to being on a program where you're trying to lose weight or trying to build muscle and you're tracking your nutrition for the first time, I wouldn't throw you to the wolves and say, okay, well, in addition to learning all this stuff about tracking, I want you to eat this many calories on Monday, this many on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like it undulates and varies every single day. That's very complicated. So I tend to do just a straight calorie number across the week based on goals. So if you are trying to lose weight, I'll give you a number every day that should get you in a calorie deficit for the week. And if you are trying to build muscle, we'll get you in a moderate calorie surplus that, will have you fueling your body with what your body needs. You will be in a position to gain weight, but not so much weight that you'll pack on a ton of excess body fat. Now, I would say if you're more experienced with this stuff, whether it be training or tracking nutrition or both, you could potentially go the route of eating a little bit more on the days you work out, eating a little bit less on the days you don't. But I want to be clear about something, because I think where this comes from is from the thought process of, I'm going into the gym and burning like 600, 700, 800 calories. So that means I should be eating way, way more on those days that I work out. And I hate to break it to you, but you're not burning that many calories when you work out, unless you're doing high intensity interval training for a half hour or 45 minutes or an hour every day constantly. You're not burning that many calories. And the thing about fitness is, especially with cardio, your body gets more efficient at it. And it does to an extent get more efficient at lifting, where, when you get started with a program, the amount of calories that you burn, your body's going to figure out ways to get more efficient at doing those exercises and doing those workouts and doing those movement patterns, so that it doesn't have to burn as many calories when you're doing those things. So if you start going for a 1 mile walk every day, you're going to burn a bunch of calories up front, but the longer and more consistently you are with doing that 1 mile walk, your body's going to get more efficient at it, and you're actually going to burn fewer calories by doing that same workout. So you'll have to push it and do more work to try and burn the same amount of calories. And all of this comes down to it's really a complicated process to try and balance the amount of calories that you're burning with the amount of calories that you should be eating, and figuring out how all of that comes together to set your nutrition up on a day-to-day basis. It's impossible to do that. You don't know how many calories you're burning. You never will know. Your watch could tell you something. The cardio machine could tell you something. You could plug in, information into a calorie calculator online, and that could tell you something. But at the end of the day, we are never going to be able to get a accurate gauge on how many calories you're burning in your workouts. So it makes it complicated to try and balance those higher days and those lower days if you're trying to be precise about things, which again is why I like to just fall back on a single daily number for you to have on a regular basis, because it's simple. It's simple and it's effective if you're consistent with it and if you're accurate with it in terms of how many calories that you're eating each and every day. So I think more than anything, I lean towards not trying to do that, having higher days and having lower days. But I will say, with all that said, well, let me put it this way. I'm not a fan of doing higher days and lower days based on whether or not you're working out. I am, though, a fan of having some higher and lower days throughout the week just to build in some more flexibility. So oftentimes what that looks like, and I do this with my clients relatively regularly, and some clients I'm about to talk about calorie cycling. Some clients I have do calorie cycling consistently. That's how their nutrition plan is set up. That's a small percentage. A larger percentage of the people I work with, we will look at the week ahead and talk about what do you have coming up, and somebody has a wedding coming up, or they're going to on a football road trip or something like that, and we want to structure things so that they're able to go to that event or have fun for that weekend and have a lot of flexibility to work with, so they don't have to stress and be super meticulous and worried about every calorie that's going into their mouth when they should be having a good time, right? So we will use calorie cycling a lot in that way. But I don't often have people eat more or less based on whether or not they're exercising that day. That just is complicated. It kind of like reinstills to me the thought process of we should count calories burned. And I don't think that's a good way to approach fitness and food. I think, it really is probably most appropriate for people who are more advanced with training and nutrition, where you can more accurately say okay, well, I've been training consistently for 5 years, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. This is how my body tends to react to training. This is, okay, I've been eating a certain way for that same amount of time, and I've seen my body respond in these different ways. So I know if I do this with my nutrition, this is how my body responds. If you're much more advanced and have a lot of the details with all these things, then I think you probably can, and maybe even you should, balance things out based on the days that you train and the days that you don't. But at the end of it, I think that's a very small percentage of people who are pursuing something with fitness and nutrition. So I think for the vast majority of people, find a way to get into a calorie deficit or maintenance or a calorie surplus based on, what your goal is, and then ride that out. This is all about moderation. I don't think anybody should push it too extreme. So if you're trying to lose weight and you want to get in a calorie deficit, you shouldn't be eating as few calories as you possibly can. If you try to build muscle, you shouldn't be doing the hero diet and eating everything in sight every single day. Neither of those two options are going to be best for you in terms of getting the body composition that you want. So be moderate with it, a moderate calorie deficit, moderate calorie surplus, ride that out every single day and see how your body responds. And I think that's the most simple, straightforward, and still effective way to approach this type of stuff.